Hey scrapbook friends, it's Nicole, and I'm here by request from one of my friends to do a tutorial on what I call a Filmstrip Photo Border. This is a super easy project that works great to showcase maybe a sequence of photos to use as a border on a layout about going to the movies or even playing dress up, acting, any of those things. And of course, if you're a Disney fan like myself, for Hollywood Studios or Universal Studios, actually, even if you're a fan of that other theme park down there in Florida or California. So this is a very easy, quick project. And one of the things I love about it is that it uses the Picket Fence Cartridge from the Border Maker system. If you own the Border Maker system, then you own the Picket Fence Cartridge, because this is the cartridge that comes with every single purchase of the Border Maker system from Creative Memories, whether you bought it in old CM prior to 2014 or new CM when the company came out of bankruptcy and was restarted. So everybody has this Picket Fence cartridge, but I don't see it used a lot, and I would love to change that because we all have it. This is like the universal Border Maker cartridge, and so we desperately need more ideas for it. So that's what we're going to use. It's also really helpful if you have the Creative Memories 13-inch cutting mat, because that's going to help you with your positioning. And you're going to want a repositionable tape runner just to adhere the pieces down. So the first thing we're going to do is cut a border, two borders from the black cardstock with the Picket Fence cartridge. Hopefully everybody knows how to use the Border Maker system. I have a longer video if you don't remember, but just to talk you through it real quick. First thing you do is flip up the paper tray from the bottom. You use this to position the edge of your paper so that you have the exact right distance from the base. Then you lift up the magnet arm, slide your paper in, position it with this edge, close the magnet, and flip the paper tray out of the way. And that way you know that your border is going to punch the right depth every time you do it. And it's just so easy to line this up perfectly. All right, now what I like to do is, rather than swap out and get my trimmer and then get my Border Maker back out, we're just going to go ahead and cut the other side, because we need two strips of this. Now, if you're not familiar with the Border Maker, you notice that the front of the cartridge has these little teeth. So you always want to put the cartridge in with the logo toward the back so that this opening is at the front with the little teeth. And they go into these little grooves on the underside of the paper holder. So then you're going to line up. There's a tiny little arrow, not an arrow, like a little indentation right here on the cartridge holder, and these tiny little bump outs on the paper guide. The first couple of times you use your Border Maker system, you might need to look at those to make sure you got it in the right place, but you will feel it just snap right in. It is just so easy to use. And then when you're done, you just push this button on the back and you may shake it a little bit and this will pop right out. Sometimes they get stuck, especially if you have maybe the old Border Maker system and a new cartridge. Sometimes the fit's a little bit snug. If it doesn't come out right when you push this button, you can easily just push the button and then just kind of nudge it with your finger to bring it out. I mean, there's nothing in there that's going to grab it to keep it in there. It's just friction. So we're done with that. I'm going to scooch my little punch confetti away because I don't need that. And then put my Border Maker away and grab my 12-inch trimmer. And then we want to cut these so that the point is on the 1-inch line. So I just call this cutting it by 1 inch. Whenever I cut an inch, or actually whenever I cut 1 3/4 inches or smaller, I like to put the bulk of my paper on the wide side of my trimmer. You can cut up to 1 3/4 inches on this side. You can, of course, cut it this way to 1 inch, but then you only have this tiny little section of the raised edge to make sure that your paper is straight. So I always like to cut with the bulk of my paper on the wide edge, line up my points at the 1-inch line, and we're just going to trim that to get our two 12-inch borders. And then we're going to take this remaining piece of paper and cut it at 4 1/4 inches. So that one, of course, I have to line up on this side. And you can line it up with the bottom or the top, whatever works for you. I tend to use the bottom because that's the side that's closest to me, but there are no rules about that. Okay, so there's our pieces that we're going to need. And then we're going to take our repositionable tape runner, and I just have a one of the power layouts guides from our power layout box, and I've written on it with a Sharpie, so I remember to use this one only for repositionable tape. There are lots of things you can use. I'm not saying this is the only right way, but this is something that I already had. I didn't have to go buy it, and it just protects my work surface. If you use your cutting mat, this repositionable tape loves to stick onto this, and it can get kind of unsightly. So I like to use this or a piece of scratch paper, and I'm just going to put adhesive on about the 1/3 of the point size of the pickets. And I love the repositionable tape because when you put it on here, it doesn't go in the empty spaces. I mean, there's a tiny little bit that pokes out, but anything that's on, that goes over, you can just easily rub off with your finger. And this does eventually become more tacky. It never becomes officially technically permanent, but as long as you got this in your album with a page protector over the top, you're going to be fine. Okay, so I've lined this up along one of the straight lines on my cutting mat, and then I'm going to position this a 1/2 inch in. And so I'm going to, actually I'm going to slide that right here so it's on the bottom edge so that I know I can line up this piece with the bottom. And I'm just going to line it up on that 1/2 inch line, all the way up. There's the 1/2 inch line. And then I'm going to do the same with the other piece. Remember, the adhesive only goes really just on these points. And then we're going to do the same thing. Just line it up. You could do this without having something to guide it. You could just eyeball it or use a different kind of a ruler or something, but I just find this so helpful to make sure that everything is straight, just the way I want it. All right, so here's our finished film strip border. And then what really works for this is if you trim your photos to 4 by 3 3/4 inches. You can fit 3 of them on this film strip with a little bit of a gap so that the spacing is pretty similar to what to what you have on the sides between the pictures. So I think that just works really, really well. I do like it on a colored background. Whatever theme you're going with, that's when you can, do the theme. I wouldn't probably go with something too busy, but definitely a little bit of pattern, a little bit of color is great for this. You also can, if you want to, maybe you want to do your film strip at a diagonal. And the way to do that would just be to punch, an extra border and an extra piece that's 4 1/4 wide and adhere it. So I have one here that I've done that with, where you can see that here at the bottom, I just stuck another piece on. I overlapped them a little bit just to make sure they were lined up just right. And that way you could put it at an angle. So if you did that, you are going to have this seam. But if you cover over that with one of your photo mats, and of course your photo then would go off the edge. So you would need an extra photo. You'd need to be able to trim, to have that go off the edge and then just trim the sides. But super easy to do this if you would rather do it at an angle. But I think it looks great, just the 1 12-inch strip straight up and down, or even just at a little bit of an angle anyway, without worrying about that. But you have lots of options. Just remember, you want the 2 picket fence borders trimmed to 1 inch, the 4 1/4 center, and then the photos are 4 3/4. And just keep all your little piecing together on the back, and nobody will ever know that this wasn't just a pre-made die cut or, you know, page embellishment that you bought in a store, because it looks great. I hope that you will be inspired by this idea, that you will give a little bit of love to your Picket Fence Border cartridge, and that you will be able to use this on one of your layouts very soon. Thank you so much, and happy scrapbooking.